just blame this whole thing on Nick not being here. I'll be honest with you. I'm not alone in the studio. This week, I'm pleased to have our sports insider, Isaac Petcash, with us this morning. IP, how was the weekend?
That's very courteous of you. I don't know if I'd call it sports insider, but I'll take it. Yeah, it was a great weekend, man. A lot of great things, and I'll tell you what, it is hard to believe that we're already in playoff season, but it's been so much fun to get to see this and get to see everything happen and whatnot. It's just been wonderful to see. So
I agree. Rich said, actually, as we came in this morning, this is the last week of February.
I know, crazy. March 1st is Saturday.
Unbelievable.
It's wild.
Super fast. Speaking of the man, as always, we're joined by our award-winning producer, the great and powerful Rich Smith. How are you, my friend?
It really did not pay off this morning when I had to call Joel and say, what's the matter with this thing?
Well, you worked all your magic. And part of that magic is that magical cell phone with the right cell phone numbers in it. So I think it counts. All right. We're coming in a little bit late, so let's get into the show. Don't forget, you can listen anytime, anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to give us a follow or shout out on Twitter at FC Sports Talk, or you can complain about us to the boss at I'm Dr. Artman. Today, a truncated show, but we're breaking down all the upcoming games in D-10 and PIAA playoff basketball this week. So without any further ado, let's get into the North Shore Rewind, brought to you by Duskus Funeral Home. All right, we are going to go a little bit out of order, Isaac, so I'm going to start with the 2-minute drill, and then we're going to talk playoff basketball the rest of the way.
As you should.
Okay, let's go. Let's start with high school wrestling. Cathedral Prep won the District 10 Class 2A Wrestling Championship with 193.5 points, led by Brandon Bird, who took the 160-pound title. Northeast crowned two champions, Cyrus Hurd at 133 and Logan Lattimore at 215 pounds. Corey's Mason Savitz won at 172 pounds and also tied Corey's all-time wins record with 144. That's incredible. Fort LaBeouf's John Duran repeated as the 285-pound champ. Up in 3A, Harbor Creek's Gavin Zillman won at 160 pounds, and McDowell's Lucas Kurlowich took the 152-pound title. The top 8 wrestlers at each weight division advanced to the regionals next week. Out to Edinburgh, women's basketball defeated nationally ranked Seton Hill, the 11th ranked team in the country, 82-66 over the weekend, leading from the first quarter and never looking back. Morgan Gentile filled up the stat sheet for Edinburgh with 20 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 steals. Gabby McDuffie added 19 points, while Rachel Manfredo contributed 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 blocks. The win ties Edinburgh with Seton Hill atop the PSAC West standings with 2 games remaining. Ooh, intrigue. Down to Gannon, across the street, women's wrestling claimed their first ever regional team title with 5 regional champions, all of whom qualified for nationals. Brielle Larson won at 117, Jaden Bazemore at 124, Lily Ujfalvi at 138, Nyla Burgess at 160, and Bella Phillips at 180. They're part of 9 total national qualifiers overall for the Golden Knights. Out to Penn State Barron, men's and women's swimming and diving teams both secured AMCC titles at the SUNYAC-AMCC Championships. That's a mouthful. The men claimed their 17th overall title. Tim Compton was named swimmer of the meet. And the women's earned their 14th AMCC Championship, led by Cameron Waters, who broke multiple records in the 100 backstroke and was also named swimmer of the meet. Can I do one more, guys?
Sure, why not?
I got to mention the Otters. The Otters face the Flint Firebirds tonight at home in a crucial Western Conference matchup. Firebirds sit just 1 spot behind the Otters in the Western Conference standings. Erie looks to snap a 3-game skid and maintain their edge over Flint in the tightly contested race to the playoffs.
Got to turn myself back on.
Yeah.
I was at that game on Saturday on Star Wars night. Did not end well.
I think that's the difference between the London and Kitcheners of the division and Erie. I mean, it's we talked about this at our live show on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Give us a follow on that, about how the standings are so they're structured this year a little bit differently with the teams. You have Windsor, you have London, you have Kitchener, and then there is a drop-off, I think, and then you have Saginaw, Erie, and Flint are the next 3 teams. And so the biggest question is who's going to get that 4th spot to be a home team in the playoffs. Erie right now, Chris Millette's in town. He was here over the weekend, but they're going to have to step it up because they're starting to lose ground with Saginaw, and now Flint's on their tail too.
And if you're Coach Millette coming into town this late in the season, we talked about it, but how quickly can you get that team into your style of play, 100%. Into the groove, and you got to do it in such a truncated fashion.
Yes, 100%.
All right, gentlemen, let's get into basketball playoffs. Let's start with the boys' side of the bracket. What do you think? I've got the games in ascending order, single A up to 6A. So let's start in single A.
Yeah.
There is one game Tuesday.
No games have been played yet.
Right. Well, exactly. One game this week, Tuesday, down at HFEC. It's the opener at 6 p.m. The winner will play Erie First Christian for the single A title. Number 2, Youngsville versus number 3, West Middlesex. Middlesex coming in, losing 4 of its last 6. Youngsville has lost 3 straight, Isaac. Rylan Benton from Youngsville, though. Sophomore, averages 18.6 points per game. He's made 57 three-pointers on the season. Another underclassman, David Manning, a junior, has made 63 pointers on the season. And then for Middlesex, we're looking at a senior, John Partridge, who leads the way with 15.2 points per game. Who do you like in that game?
It's a horse apiece. I think you got to probably take Youngsville. I don't see whoever wins this game beating Erie First. I don't think anyone's going to go against Avery Collins. And again, in the 3-team bracket, you have to favor the 1 seed in a lot of situations. I think Erie First is primed well. But if I had to flip a coin, I think Youngsville probably pulls it out.
Now, looking ahead, I don't want to predict winners too much, but let's say Youngsville does pull this one out. They seem to have the ability to stretch the floor more. 123 made three-pointers. I'm sorry, 113 made three-pointers between their 2 top players. Can they stretch the floor enough to give EFC a run?
I don't think so. I hate to say that, but I just think when you look at what Collins can do to help the floor, they got a couple of big guys in too that the Eagles can use at their disposal. I just think Erie First Christian is going to be too fast, too mobile for Youngsville or West Middlesex, whoever wins that game.
And the guy we've been talking about since the beginning of the season, the preseason player of the year, Avery Collins, down there at Erie First Christian, leads District 10 in scoring. He's been one to watch.
Yeah, he's a stud. And I think too for Erie First. I mean, consider this too. Whoever wins this game tonight is going to be in the state tournament. Class 1A gets 2 teams. So not that there's not pressure to win the District 10 championship, but obviously whichever team gets out of this tonight is going to be in. So I think for Erie First, you look at the game and you think, not that we want to look ahead, but you have to think that the Eagles are sitting there probably discussing state playoffs and their prospective opponents, given the fact that they're already in.
Sure, but a big game coming up tomorrow night for these 2 teams. Like you said, winner may not necessarily win the D-10 championship. It's going to be a tough game, but you get a shot at the state playoffs.
Yeah,
playing for the state playoffs
right
tomorrow night. Haggerty Family Event Center, 6 p.m. Let's go to AA. 1 game left. Number 2 Mercyhurst Prep versus number 3 Lakeview. That game is tomorrow night down at Meadville, 6 p.m. They'll get the winner of the Rocky Grove Eisenhower game to play for the D10 crown later in the week. Mercyhurst Prep won 75-31 over Greenville. Lakeview won 66-48 over Cochranton to get to this game. Who do you like between Mercyhurst and Lakeview?
I'll tell you what, this is going to be a heck of a game. This Sailor team is no joke, and we saw it on Friday when, Cochranton's no slouch, and I think the Sailors did a really good job of scoring early. They doubled up the Cardinals in the first quarter and really didn't look back. And again, that's with Walker Carroll being as good as he is for Cochranton. I just think when you look at this game and you look at the depth of the lineup, I think Mercyhurst Prep is just too deep. They show that against Greenville. They're going to be really, really hard to beat, and I would take them to probably win this game.
Appreciate you on that one. Truncated B block, but we'll be back with much more playoff basketball in just a moment. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill.
Yeah, we're off.
All right, welcome back for the fastest version of Flagship City Sports Talk here on Talk Erie. Paul Adams, Zach, Isaac Petcash, Rich Smith, all in studio this morning, panicking, but we're doing okay.
But you know what? The crazy thing is we had no guests lined up, so it ended up being a blessing in disguise.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair. Over-prepared and under-caffeinated, I think, is where we're gonna go with this one.
Technology's great when it works and not when it doesn't, eh?
Tell me about it.
All right, so, fellas, we were talking the boys basketball side of the bracket. We did the 2-minute drill. We talked about single A boys. We talked about double A boys. Isaac gave us some predictions. Let's continue moving through the boys basketball bracket, and we've moved our way now to triple A. One game this week, Isaac. It is the D-10 championship. Number 1 Mercer versus number 3 Iroquois. Final Tuesday at Meadville. Winner advances to the PIAA playoffs. We'll play the District 9 champion on Friday in a sub-regional game. Iroquois are the defending District 10 champions, but they moved up to 3A this season. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. They're led by Roman Caporal.
Yeah, Caporal. Yeah.
Caporal, there you go. 14 points per game. Kellen Burrows at 12.5. Mercer seeking its first District 10 title since 1989. Boy, that's a long time ago. But enters a 10-game losing streak. Enters on a 10-game losing streak. Jaden Amos leads the Mustangs with 13 points per game.
Can I just say, go ahead.
I was just going to say, were you alive yet?
I was born in 89, so I feel that's why I was allowed to make that joke.
So can I just say quickly, because I know we want to talk about 4A, but on Iroquois. I say this with I love Ron Paisley. He's an amazing coach. So this is going to sound a great job. This is going to sound bad, but it's not bad. The regular season clearly does not matter to Iroquois.
Yes.
If you look at what Ron Paisley has done going back to last year and into this year, if you flash back to 2024, this team was in the 2A bracket. They were the 6th seed. Nobody gave them a shot. They were playing a Lakeview team that had lost only 6 games all year. No one thought that they had a chance, myself included, at winning the entire bracket. And they come through and not just win that game, but then they dominate. I mean, they had double-digit wins in their last 2 victories, both in the semifinals and the D10 championship against a really good Cambridge Springs team. And you look at this year, they were 11-11 going into the playoffs last year, 9-13 going into the playoffs this season. They benefit so much from playing the 4A schools, right, in Region 6 and some in Region 5, that it has really been to their advantage this year, now going into the 3A bracket. And I'll tell you what, I haven't watched much of Mercer, but I would be picking Iroquois in this game if I had to make a pick. I just think that Ron Paisley gets his squad good to go for playoffs. They're fundamentally sound, having played that competition. When they get to that point, they're going to be a tough out coming up on Tuesday night.
I don't disagree. They got to this game with a 54-44 win over Corey. Corey was another good school, good basketball team this year. A double-digit win there. So that kind of proves your point that as the playoffs approach and once they enter the postseason, Iroquois is just a different monster, different animal completely. And you said it. Ron Paisley really took over a program that I don't know if they won 2 games the year before he took over, and he's in a short amount of time turned that program around.
And he's a wonderful head coach. He's got his team believing again, and belief is such a big thing. I remember covering the D10 championship last year against Cambridge Springs. You could just tell from the tip they believed that they were better, and I think that that's carried over into this season. They lost a couple of seniors, Javion Lucas being one from last year, but the majority of their core returned, and they're showing it again in the postseason, man. They turn a different gear when they get into the playoffs.
And some PIAA playoff experience on that squad this year.
And again, like you said, it's one team out of 3A. So you're going to have to essentially make sure that you've got everything buttoned up on Tuesday. Mercer's a worthwhile adversary. So it'll be a fun game down at the House of Thrills on Tuesday night.
Love to see it. That was AAA. Last game, D10 championship. On to Quad A. Chaos indeed. Yes, took the words right out of my mouth. Let's start with number 1 Cathedral Prep versus number 5 Grove City. The winner of that game will get, winner of that game is going to get the Hickory or Sharon winner for the D10 crown. Prep Grove City at General McLean Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. How did they get there? Cathedral Prep with a big win over Farrell, 83-47. Grove City, a tight one, 39-35 over Harbor Creek. For Grove City, the senior Nathan Greer averaging 20.8 points per game. We mentioned him earlier, only Avery Collins has made more field goals this season than Greer. Avery made 209, Greer 204, and Greer has done it in the paint. Only 2 made 3-pointers on the season. So they have a big inside presence. How does Cathedral Prep handle the big man?
Well, I think they're going to have to rely on their size. You look at guys like Max Wallace, McDonald as well, guys who can really attack the glass. And I'll tell you what, 4A has been a really catastrophic for some, a chaotic region where you had all the upsets in the first round. Cathedral Prep has been the one model of consistency in this bracket. I thought Farrell was going to be able to score the basketball a little bit with Prep on Friday night. That just did not happen. I mean, Cathedral Prep came out, they absolutely smothered them, 83 points in that win against Farrell. And now you get a Grove City team that relies on Greer in the paint, and then they rely on a lot of defense too. I'm checking my phone right now. I still think Grove City has the basketball and hasn't taken a shot yet. I don't know if you guys saw that on Friday night. Absolutely ridiculous. There needs to be a shot clock. We talked about that 2 weeks ago with Tom Koval on the podcast, but I rest my case. That's for a different day. I still think Prep's offense is too good in this game, but I mean, Grove City's got a defense that can play with anybody. Harbor Creek struggled to score the basketball, but I think Prep's got a bit of a different offense. And for me, Hickory Sharon's a toss-up. I mean, they've already played twice this season. Yeah. That'll be a really fun game, and the fact that it's not a football game is exciting too. Between those two schools.
Well, look at this over here. Is this a can of worms on the desk here? It's talking about the shot clock in Pennsylvania basketball.
Yeah, we can talk about this all the time.
I think you stole my point from just a few moments ago. The chaotic region, or the chaotic class that has been 4A all year long, the one constant has been Cathedral Prep, essentially at that number one slot. The record does not show that they're like an undefeated, untied, unscored upon team. They played a lot of top-end schools from out of state. They travel fairly well, put themselves in a fairly tough schedule every season. So once they get to this time of year, they are pretty battle-tested.
Yeah, I want to make another mention too, by the way, and this is why I loved the fact that there was a 14-team bracket. Keep in mind, there are two other games on Tuesday in 4A that we haven't talked about, and that's the fifth place bracket, because 5 teams are going from Class 4A this year. You got Farrell and Harbor Creek at General McLean at 6 o'clock, Slippery Rock and Oil City in the other consolation semifinal at 6. So you look at the way District 10 picked the brackets, and we talked about, well, were there going to be 8 teams? Were there going to be 10 teams? If there was only an 8-team bracket, none of these teams would have been in a tournament. And now, even though they've all lost, you have 4 low seeds in this tournament who get to battle it out for another spot in the state playoffs. Your season's not over. So as exciting as these semifinals are, man, I look at these consolation semis and I'm like, this is going to be a bloodbath. This is going to be so much fun because one of these 4 teams that you could make the argument may have had no shot to get in if there was an 80 or even 10-team tournament, now have that opportunity. It'll be really exciting to see. But so 4 games in 4A coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, the top 4 seeds essentially playing for seeding. But yeah, you said it. We got 4 teams battling for one spot. That is going to be bloodbath was a great word.
Yeah.
So that's in Quad A. Let's move up to 5A. Only one team in 5A in District 10, Meadville. Congratulations, you're the champions. They're going to take on District 9's champion Dubois, or Dubois for our French-Canadian listeners, Tuesday at 7 o'clock down in Dubois. They did play earlier this season. Meadville they beat Dubois 64-54 back on February the 11th. Meadville last played in a game on February 13th. That's nearly 2 weeks ago when they took down McDowell 39-35. Dubois able to win the District 9 championship with a 57-42 victory over Punxsutawney. How do you feel that Meadville fares in PIAA playoffs?
It's all about how they can shoot the basketball. I think if Jack Burchard and Lucas Luderin are on their game with their shooting touch, they're going to be a tough team to beat because those two are really, really difficult to stop as a tandem. If there's a team that they face, whether it's Dubois or down the line if they make the state playoffs, that is able to, at least from my perception, be able to guard well with tie zone, I think then it becomes a bit of a problem with Meadville because the second they get taken off the 3-point line, you have to switch strategies and it's not their bread and butter to try to win the game inside. But if they shoot the ball well, man, if they're shooting 45-50% from 3, they can beat anybody. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare against Dubois. That's a road game for them tomorrow, so not an easy environment. Right. But I'll tell you what, that team is, when they're shooting well, they're dialed in. So I think they got a shot.
I look at the game against McDowell. Very good defensive team, good offensive team, but a team that you would expect to be able to shut down that 3-point shot against Meadville. And they did so to an extent, but Meadville was then able to dial up their own form of defense and go, okay, if you want to play a low-scoring game, we can play that too, holding McDowell to 35 points. Now, again, that was nearly 2 weeks ago, so you get back to that classic rust versus rest. And how much you're going to see that in the early goings of the game. How do you feel Meadville fares in that rust versus rest dichotomy?
Yeah, it's hard because you never want to have that much time off. And I think, 5A has always been that, whether it's been prep in the past,
right.
Or again, like Meadville now, or even like in 6A with McDowell and Erie, even if you win your championship game, you still get some time. I think for Meadville, the key for them is going to be how do you fare in the second quarter? I think you have to expect that they'll be rushed in the first 8 minutes.
Right.
If you can't get down by more than 6, 7, I mean, even 10 points, you're still within it. But don't get run out of the gym in the first quarter. I think that'll be the key for them. Once they settle in, then I think they'll be fine. Because, again, they've played a relatively difficult schedule this year, so they should be battle-tested.
Absolutely. DuBois, once again, the D-9 champion. This is a PIAA sub-regional, so they're already in state playoff action. All right, that's the boys' side. We have one more classification that is all the way up at 6A. Another one that we have a class champion, McDowell, taking on District 8's Taylor Alderdice at McDowell, Tuesday at 7 p.m. McDowell, of course, beat Erie 57-55 in an instant classic last week for the 6A title. Taylor Alderdice upended Obama Academy 59-53 in another good one last week. If we look back to the 2024 playoffs, McDowell and Taylor Alderdice met up then. McDowell came away champion 62-54 in that matchup. Doesn't really look, I should say, it doesn't do a whole lot of justice going back to last year, because high school basketball, you're looking at so much roster turnover, so much change from year to year, but just to kind of give you an idea of their roster versus McDowell's roster and the talent.
But it does do justice because they did play this year too. Back on January 11th, that was at Pole Gold Gymnasium. McDowell actually ran away with that in the second half. It was competitive for a half. Alderdice played well with them in the first 2 quarters, and then McDowell kind of ran away with it. That was one of Camden Kramer's best shooting days of the season, if I recall. I'm actually excited I get to call this game tomorrow night, and I think there's such familiarity between the two teams, to your point, Paul, from going back to the playoffs last year. I mean, they've had some history in the postseason. I really like the fact that McDowell won a defensive game in their victory against Erie back on Thursday. I think what it showed is they can win in pressure situations. Kevin O'Connor's been able to do so. I mean, really, our basketball insider, Tom Koval's been the one guy who's been able to clip him in the last few seasons. So I think McDowell is good under pressure. They've got the shooters to be able to win the basketball game. My big question is going to be with Alderdice, because I don't think they're as talented as they've been in previous years, is how are they going to block, not block, but how are they going to defend between Kramer and Leo Finazzo on the 3-point line? It's almost like a Bertrand Lutheran equation. How do you play well at the high position? And then if you try to guard them up high, you got to deal with Baby Porter down low. So I would like McDowell in this game if they can be the consistent offensive team that they've been, but their defense did show up against Erie, so there's a lot of promise with that too.
Well, you kind of took the name out of my mouth. I was going to mention Baby Porter as my pregame player of the game. I think he's going to be important in this one. Just a big physical body in the low post. I think once the playoffs come around, you get a more physical brand of basketball. I think he's built for it. I think Blaze Myers is built for that kind of atmosphere. I think McDowell just going to be a little bit too tough for Taylor Alderdice. All right, before we get to our last segment, I do have to thank our sponsors for sticking with us. Quick Fill, Duska's Funeral Home, Dauber Auto Supply, John's Wildwood Pizza, Denny's Sales and Service. When we get back, we'll have the girls basketball bracket, a quick run through of that. This was the North Shore Rewind, brought to you by Duska's Funeral Home. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. Side of the bracket in high school basketball. Isaac, let's do the girls then side of the bracket.
Yeah, let's go.
We'll start in single A. Only one game this week. The District 10 championship being played Saturday, March 1st. It's going to be number 1 Commodore Perry versus number 2 Farrell. Up in double A, number 1 Kennedy Catholic taking on number 5 Eisenhower, and then number 2 Wilmington versus number 3 Lakeview. Both those games taking place at Sharon on Wednesday. Non-Erie County teams up to this point. But once we get into AAA, oh boy, it starts to get fun. Number 2 Seneca versus number 3 Greenville. That one's at the Haggerty Family Event Center Wednesday at 6 p.m. And then the big show following that game at 7:30. Number 1 undefeated Northwestern taking on number 4 Mercyhurst Prep. Northwestern 2-0 against Mercyhurst Prep this season. They won 54-47 back on February the 13th. They won 54-27 way back earlier in the season. So the same number of points for Northwestern in both contests. Mercyhurst Prep able to add on attack on another 20 points in the second meeting. Are they able to continue that climb to reach the Wildcats finally in the playoffs?
I'll tell you what, this is the one game that if I'm Northwestern, I'd be concerned about. This is the third time playing your rival. They played a third time last season, albeit they had split the regular season series, and Mercyhurst Prep ended up winning. Dan Perfetto is going to have his girls ready to go. And keep in mind that second matchup back at Mercyhurst Prep was tied entering the fourth quarter. So I think, again, when you look at the talent, Michaela Presser-Palmer clearly is the best player. Steve Sowin's got his defense really dialed in.
Yep.
But you give Coach Perfetto a third shot at a team, given the fact he's already lost twice, this would be a game where if I was a betting man, I would stay away, because I think ultimately Northwestern should win the game, but knowing the experience that Mercyhurst Prep team has year in, year out, you can't count them out of that game. I think it's going to be a down to the wire finish. I think we could see a last second shot win this game.
I think it's going to be very, very low scoring. I agree that it's going to be a down to the wire thing. And I don't disagree. Michaela Presser-Palmer, the best player on the court, I think, bar none. I think by a wide margin. But in the coaching standpoint, Dan Perfetto, you mentioned 500 games at Mercyhurst, 397 and 103. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and this is one of those games, too, where I think, we talked about all season how good Michaela is, but how much you want to distribute the ball to different areas, right? This is a game where you're putting the ball in Michaela's hands, the entire game. She had a really good game the last time these two teams played. It slips my mind how many points she had. I think it was somewhere over 30. I think you got to just give her the ball here. This is a game where you say, win us the game, get us through, because, again, if you get too cute in this game, Dan Perfetto is going to beat you. There's just no question about it.
Watching a little bit of Mercyhurst highlights over the weekend, they play well as a team. What they lack, I think, not so much size, height, but so much thickness, physicality. Who are you going to place in the low post? They've got some trees down there, but they don't have a whole lot of heavy players, shall I say, a whole lot of strength in the low post. And I think that's where you mentioned Presser-Palmer's going to be able to insert her will driving to the basket.
Yeah, and we'll see. It's going to be a great game. I mean, these two teams know each other well, no question. And I think we're going to see a classic at the back end of the game, which will be interesting because in the next game we're going to talk about, if you're Seneca, because I think they're going to beat Greenville, you want these teams to go to 4 overtimes and beat each other up.
So, yeah, and that game is the plays prior to Northwestern and Mercyhurst Prep. Once again, that's at the Haggerty Family Event Center on Wednesday night. That's AAA. Up to 4A, another intriguing bracket. Number 2, Harbor Creek taking on number 6, Slippery Rock. That's at Meadville Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And then followed by number 1, Fairview taking on number 5, Franklin at 7:30. Fairview won 39-25 over Franklin back on February the 3rd. Who do you like between Harbor Creek and Slippery Rock? Who do you like in Fairview versus Franklin?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Slippery Rock had one of the more underrated wins of the entire tournament, boys and girls, on Saturday. They beat General McLean, a team that had beat them earlier in the regular season. Slippery Rock is on a complete tear. They have not lost since that GM game on January 20th. I still think Harbor Creek, for me, would be a slight favorite in this game. I would probably pick them to win, but I think that'll be one that's down to the wire. And I think ultimately, as good of a season as Franklin has had, Fairview's defense is too good. I think they end up coming out, and I think it's going to be a Fairview Harbor Creek 4A championship in what would be a rematch the third time between those two teams.
I think of Fairview like a jockey riding a horse. You don't let it go full out until you get to the end. He plays 9, 10, 11 girls. I think this is where you start to see Fairview really start to dominate games as he gets to his top 5, 6, 7 players.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen Aaron Garrity in the D10 semis and the finals hold teams to under 20 points? The defense is like a boa constrictor. They just keep they tighten around you, and by the time you know it, you've got 2 minutes left in the game, you've got 14 points. And I think that could be something that happens again this weekend, ultimately when the 4A championship game gets decided on Saturday.
All right, up to 5A, Cathedral Prep will play the District 9, District 8 winner on Wednesday night. They'll play them March 1st. Up to 6A, Erie defeated Warren 43-26 to win the District 10 6A championship. Erie went on a 19-1 run to take control, led by Aubrey and Drea Nevins. Deaja Williams the three of them each had 12 points. The defense stifled Warren, whose top scorer, Alyssa Farr, finished with 9 points. The Royals moved to 11-7. Warren's season ends at 10-13. Erie will play District 8 champion Taylor Alderdice on March the 1st.
I think Erie's would be a heavy favorite in that game. Man, the Nevins twins are just so good. They have different skill sets and tendencies, and they feed off each other really well. This is a team that I think could also potentially make a run. They've got the makeup. They played really sound defensively this season. I think, not that any game's an easy walkover, but I think they're going to be able to take care of business on Saturday. And then here we go into the state tournament. And with the way that team's playing with Deaja Williams, anything could happen.
Tremendous athleticism and can score the basketball. That's a dangerous combo. Erie, thank you for joining us today. It was a truncated show, but we had a lot of fun. My name is Paul Adamzak, and I'm signing off for Isaac Petcash and Rich Smith. Make sure to check out the Gem City Sports Podcast Network throughout the week. I've got a new episode of the Draft Podcast dropping Wednesday night. All you need to know about the upcoming NFL Combine. Have a great Monday, and we'll see y'all next time.